If you haven't unironically loved Twilight since you were what, 12, then are we even friends? Hey, welcome to my video. If you're from my Instagram, I love you, and if you're not from my Instagram, love you all the same. Welcome to Monthly Book Club, a series here on my channel where I tell you exactly what I read this month and exactly what I rated. So we are talking about the month of May, and I have done a lot of reading this month, so I am excited to tell you about it. But before we really get into it, I do have a few disclaimers. Number one, I love authors. I honestly think they're such geniuses, and I am never here to bash them. I am here to tell you my honest opinion about these books, but I still want to be respectful while doing it. Another thing is that I might mention a book that you want to read or you have read and loved, and maybe, for example, I didn't. If that's the case, I never want to discourage you from reading, period. I honestly think that it's such a subjective thing. The reason that I didn't like the book might be the same reason that you loved it. So honestly, if you still want to read something that I rated as low, I do highly encourage that, actually. And I also encourage discussions on this or any topic down below in the comments always, but I do urge you to please be respectful to everybody. We can all have a difference of opinion, but you know we don't have to be rude about it. One more thing is that, like everybody else, I have my own system of how I exactly rate these books. And so I'm gonna pop up little pictures for you here on the screen right now so you can kind of understand why I do rate the way that I do. Obviously, this is all subject to change and vibes. Sometimes I don't even know why I like a book, but if I spent most of my time kicking my feet and giggling, then I'm just gonna rate it 5 stars and I don't care. But anyway, if this sounds like your cup of tea, if it sounds like something that you might enjoy, then please keep watching. So I think we're gonna start with the 2 books that I read at the top of the month. They are a series, and we're talking about Blood Orange and Black Rose. Now I will rate these books individually, but first I wanna give you a quick synopsis of the series. So to start out with, this is an age gap vampire forbidden romance, which, if that already doesn't sound like something that you want to, pun intended, I guess, sink your teeth into, then I don't know how to talk to you. If you haven't unironically loved Twilight since you were what, 12, then are we even friends? Okay, we can still be friends, but like, you need to get in on this with me, okay? So this is about Dahlia, and she gets her parents killed by vampires at a very young age, and since then she has started working with the Witches Guild to sort of be like a vampire hunter. And at this point, they send her out on a mission to kill one of the oldest vampires who inspired Dracula, you know, the novel. And this vampire's name is Professor Valtu. I think that's how you pronounce it. Although, and I've said this in old videos, I also am a Rysand girl, not a Rhysand. And I know, Rhysand is the correct way to pronounce it. I don't care though, so moving on. So Valtu is an esteemed professor in a very old music academy in Venice, and she's sent to pretend to be a student to get close to him and kill him. If you know anything about forbidden romances, you know where this is gonna go. Obviously, she gets there and her intent is to do what she was told, but obviously she falls for him and he falls for her. And so now they have to navigate that. But what I will say, it's not as simple as that. I don't want to tell you the plot of the second book because I don't want to ruin anything, because I really want you to read this series. It's so good. All I'm going to say though is that you think it's going to go a certain way, and then boom, this happens, and then you find out this, and it's so exciting. Honestly, it really is a page turner. My eyeballs were glued to this series, but anyway, let me stop talking and get to rating. So book 1, I obviously rated 5 stars. I'm sure nobody's surprised. Honestly, it takes you adding one single vampire in a book for me to be like, oh, chef's kiss, 5 stars. But beyond that, this was a really cool storyline and definitely a very cool twist. Actually, multiple cool twists that I did not in fact foresee. Also, there is smut. Obviously, the smut is also very good. I rated it 3 chili peppers. And for me, honestly, that's pretty high. If I rate something 3 chili peppers, that means that I have read things that I haven't read about before, and considering the fact that I read smutty novels every single night pretty much, that's kind of difficult to do, so you better work. I also loved that it's happening in Venice. I love Venice. I've been there a few times, and there is just something about Venice that is so magical, so reading about it to me felt really special. And I also sort of loved feeling the anticipation of, oh, wait until Valtu finds out who she is and what she's been originally sent here to do. Because obviously, he doesn't know that she's a vampire hunter girl. He thinks that she's just a student, and that's why it's forbidden. But there is so much more, and just the anticipation of that, oh, it really got me hooked. So naturally, I read the second book of the series, and I think we can move on to that one now. This one as well, I equally enjoyed it. 5 stars, 3 chili peppers, and for me, honestly, sometimes the second or third book of the series can get a little redundant. I do have ADHD, so I do be getting bored easily, but this one, not the case at all. Now this one though, geographically, it was set in a lot of different locations, which I thought really spiced things up, and I did really enjoy that. It also kind of made me feel like I was traveling while I was reading, and I certainly wasn't. I was cozied up on a blanket right over there. So the fact that this book kind of transported me was really a nice feeling. And there were also a lot of cool twists, and that's what also made it a page turner as well. And the spicy scenes, I'm not gonna say anything because I want you to live it. But let's just say that they were really creative. And honestly, if this was 2013, would I be writing Tumblr fan fiction about this couple on there? I'm not gonna say yes, but I'm not gonna say no. So overall, I had great fun with this series, and now we can move on. We need to talk about my personal Lord and Savior, Miss Brittany Ann and Full Throttle. So the genres here are childhood friends, second chance romance, I guess, and maybe even mafia romance. Well, definitely not maybe even. It is a mafia romance, and I'm gonna explain. But before I do that, I just want to get the rating out of the way. Yeah, this was 5 stars. I'm sorry. I'm not really that sorry. But as far as spice goes, also 3 chili peppers. Very creative, I must say. So this book is about Dominique and Kane, who honestly, if you watched, I think it was last month's book club, I think I might have actually mentioned him because he did make an appearance in Brittany's novels before this. And the minute he made that first appearance, I just knew. I knew that this man was gonna become my new book boyfriend because he off the bat sounded incredible. And was I wrong? Absolutely not. I also really did like Dominique, but we'll get into that later anyways. So Kane and Dominique used to live next to each other when they were children. They both had a hard time growing up, hard family lives. Kane had it especially rough, and at a certain point he ran away and got into some trouble. He joined the Russian mafia at first and then got himself mixed up with a street racing hub in St. Louis, and this is the same hub that she was working at currently. So obviously after all this time they see each other again, and she really wants to hate him, but you can't hate Kane. I think it's impossible personally. So obviously, as we all know, forced proximity does its thing, and boy does it do its thing. Number one, I have to say that one thing I love about this series is the found family trope. It definitely makes me feel warm and cozy, and I love how Brittany presents it. And like I said, I am happy that it's about Kane. I loved him since she first mentioned him, and I think that his close friendship with one of the other female characters in this book and in the last book of this series is so wholesome, and I loved reading about that as well. He also has a very rich backstory, and you get to uncover more of it as you're reading, which I thought was pretty exciting. And Dominique, badass, does what she wants, and I love her for that. We have to talk about the spice, and I'm not gonna say anything because I don't want to ruin it. All I'm gonna say is that chapter 21 I would not read in public. Oh, I certainly wouldn't. And I have read some atrocious things in public, even on public transport. I'm sitting there with my Kindle like this, you can't tell me nothing. However, chapter 21 of this book, like, lock yourself in your room. I'm sorry. The smut really is incredible. And I will say 2 little keywords, and number 1, that's daddy, and number 2, well actually 3, lace underwear. And if you read this, you know. And if you haven't, I think that might entice you too. But yeah, love this book. Love Brittany Ann. She is an indie author, but I love reading everything that she puts out. In my opinion, it's so well written and it's so exciting. Nothing that she writes is boring, so definitely make sure to check her out if you haven't done so yet. Now let's talk about King of Sloth. So this was obviously a very highly anticipated read, and I am just like other girls. In fact, I was so excited for this. So the tropes are sort of forbidden romance, I guess. It's not that forbidden, but kind of, and billionaire playboy boyfriend. So it is about Sloane and Xavier. Xavier doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. He doesn't know if he wants to inherit the empire that his family has. And so because of some things that he's going through, he has just decided to be a playboy party man, which irritates Sloane because she is in fact his publicist. And so it's her job to make him look good, and sometimes that is definitely a difficult task. However, Xavier is extremely handsome, and Sloane says to herself that she's never gonna fall for him. All that he'll ever be is her client. Do we think, show of hands, who thinks that that actually happened like that? Yeah, nobody. You're right. She definitely did fall for him, and here's what I thought about it. So first of all, my rating, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars and 2 chili peppers. I actually really enjoyed this read. I liked Sloane and Xavier individually, so that's why I really enjoyed them as a couple as well. She's just very sassy and fiery, and obviously I like reading about female roles and female leads that are like that. And Xavier is definitely confident. One thing that I really liked about him is that as soon as he personally realized that he actually liked her, he immediately asked her out on a date. There really weren't any ifs, ands, or buts about it, because usually when I read about a trope like this, I'm used to one or both of them realizing that they like each other and then sort of playing this game of like, will we, won't we? But Xavier did not come to play around. He immediately asked her out, and I was like, oh, you better work. I was so here for that. And so I really appreciated him for that fact. I also like the fact that this was a romance novel, but it had a lot of different tie-ins to a lot of rom-com movies that I've watched. So let's talk specifics, but I won't spoil anything major. So Sloane can't cry. That's, for example, like the movie The Holiday. If you ever watched that, you would know, but if you haven't, you need to. That's one of my favorite movies ever, and I don't care. Go argue with your mother. And then also at a certain point, Xavier asks her to meet him at the Empire State Building, and it's sort of like Sex and the City, where if they both show up, something happens. I won't say what, I won't spoil it, but those were definitely tie-ins that I really appreciated. And as an avid watcher of rom-coms, as I'm sure you can tell, I really like that about this book as well. So I did actually read 3 more books this month, but we can't get into all of them because I would be yapping here for 1,000 years. So we're just gonna do one last one, and that is Choosing Theo. Now, ever since I read Ice Planet Barbarians, you know that I love me an alien romance, and I did not love this one any less. Let's get into it. So the trope here would definitely be a paranormal, supernatural sci-fi romance, and it is about Jade and Theo. Now, Jade does get abducted by a race of aliens, but now another race actually saves her and is willing to also protect her, but she has to respect their rules and stay on their planet for a year and also abide by all of their customs, one of which is choosing a husband. I am eating this up at this point, and I already read the book and I know how it ends and I know everything about it, but even recounting that, oh, I just want to read it again. Anyways, back to it. So Jade does choose a husband, and she chooses this scarred mercenary. His name is Theo, who has never ever been chosen before, and he thinks that the fact that he was chosen is definitely very unlikely and a sign that Jade is a spy. And so he's very wary of her, he's very cold towards her, and you know how I love me some of that. But eventually things do indeed heat up. Let's get into it. So for this, I need to read you my first note on this book. My first note is actually strong start, chapter 1, immediate abduction. And that's just what happened. So as soon as you were thrown into this book, you are immediately hooked. One of my other notes is that chapter 15 has me turned. because, and I won't give away too much, but here's just a little crumb. At a certain point, she doesn't think that Theo can understand her, and she's just speaking English, and all of a sudden, you just hear him go. After she had this whole ass monologue, you just hear him go, "Is that so?" And I was sitting clapping, literally clapping, because this is what supernatural paranormal romances are all about to me. I don't care. There is definitely a very cool and unexpected twist at around 78% of this book. And one thing that I highly appreciated is that there was a third act breakup, but it did actually make sense with the storyline. It wasn't just one of those mini misunderstandings that they could have literally hashed out in 2 minutes flat. It was something that made sense, and it was written really well, and I normally don't even really mess with third act breakups like that, but this one I enjoyed. So with all of that being said, this was definitely a 4-star read, and I will be reading this again. As far as smut goes, my personal controversial yet brave opinion is that this was too chili peppers. Now we can talk about it, we can debate, but you let me know what you think. But with that, we did make it to the end of the video eventually. If you made it this far, you are definitely a real one. And if you liked this video, then please consider liking, subscribing, and even maybe commenting. And I will see you in my next one. Bye!